I'm just going to mute everybody for now. Okay. All right. So the maamer is called V'shashik Dimu. It is the what would be called, I suppose, the magnum opus of the Rebbe Rashab. Although he had many magni opus, I guess you would say, magnum opuses. Some of Vav be another one, but this is definitely the longest of the Hemsheichim. 144 maamorim altogether, plus parts that were written and not actually said. A large part, but nevertheless, it is of critical importance in the Rebbe Rashab's entire approach to Hasidus, and it lays out a number of very, very important ideas and doctrines, you might say. The maamer begins with the word. Unusually, it begins at Shavuos. Most of the Hemsheichim or maamorim begin with Rosh Hashanah. This begins at Shavuos. And that, to a certain extent, tells you what the character of this whole series of maamorim is going to be. It begins with Shavuos because Shavuos was the time that we transcended, so to speak, the inyan of Seder Hishtalshelus. What does that mean? The inyan of Seder Hishtalshelus is essentially the Sfirot Pnimiot, or the Sphirois which are from Chochmah to Malchus. That is the Seder Hishtalshelus, essentially, the Seder Hishtalshelus. Above the Seder Hishtalshelus is the inyan of Keter, which transcends the whole order of Seder Hishtalshelus. It's bli gvul compared with the other Sphirois. And this is, in fact, what he starts off with, B'shashik Dimu, Yisrael Nasa Lenishma. When they proceeded at the time of Matan Torah to start off, they said, Naaseh, we will do, Venishma, we will understand later on. In other words, we will do B'Kabbalos all, even though we don't understand. In other words, we are not approaching this whole concept through rational understanding, which is the concept that's associated with Seder Hishtalshelus, but we're approaching it from the idea of what is called the Koichos Makifim, which Keter represents, the transcendent powers of the neshama. There are actually three Koichos Makifim of the neshama. The one that he speaks about primarily here, but we're going to discuss today as well. The primary one is Ratzoin, and then there are two higher Koichos Makifim corresponding to the three levels of Keser. The outer aspect of Keser is called Arich Anpin, that corresponds to the will in the human soul. Then there is Atik, sometimes called Atik Yoimin, although Atik and Atik Yoimin are actually two different aspects of the same Parzuf. Atik is the inyan of Tainug, of Oineg, which is also a Koyach Makif, and we'll speak about that today. And then the highest Koyach Makif is called Radla, Reisha de Loisiada. Reisha de Loisiada in the Zohar, the beginning that cannot be known, and that corresponds in the Neshama to the inyan of Emunah. The inyan of Emunah. In any event, what happened on the day of Matan Torah was that because we said Naaseh first, Vanishma only later on, we were given two crowns. The Melochim came and they tied crowns on the heads of Bnei Israel, Echa Keneged Naaseh, Ve'echa Keneged Nishma, and there's various questions about that the Rebbe asks, but in any event, he begins to discuss this whole idea of what the concept of Keser is, and the difference between Keser and all of the other Sphirois. Or, to put it in terms of the Neshama, the difference between Ratzoin and the Koichos HaPnimim. The Koichos HaPnimim correspond to the various Sphirois from Chochmah all the way through to Malchus. And these Koichos HaPnimim are, he explains, they are Mugbalim. They have a limitation. The limitation and their advantage is that it's an or within a kli. Masha Einkein Keser is bli gvul. It corresponds to the madrega that's bli gvul. In other words, the oir of Chochma, Bina, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, etc., all the way through to Malchus, can be received and accepted through the faculties and the proper use of the faculties that a person has. Masha Einkein Ratzoin, which is the madrega of Keser that he starts off dealing with. The madrega of Ratzoin, there's no kli for that per se. The way to achieve Ratzon is to mevatel oneself, the inyan of bittul, to the Baal HaRatzon, to the owner of Ratzon, so to speak, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Hashem, who's the Baal HaRatzon. So all of the other koichos have sort of a handle to them. The handle to Bina, for example, is Simcha. The handle to Chesed is Ahava. The handle to Gvura is Yira. And each one has its characteristic within the Nefesh. Masha Einkein, Ratzon, the inyan of Ratzon is Bitul. Bitul Ratzon Mikol Vakol, which is high even than the Bitul of Chochmah. The bittul of Chochmah is the bittul of Koach Ma, but it's not the actual inyan of Ma. It's not transcendent. I will speak about that later on again, but that is more or less the introduction to the maamer and the continuation. Let me just skip now to share screen, where you'll see the maamer. We got just a little bit further than this, I think a couple of lines further, but we're going to start, we got up to here, but we're going to start over here. We're going to start here. V'zehu Masha, we're in the fourth parak of the first maamer of Ayin Beis. The fourth parak of the first maamer. V'zehu Masha, kavonas ha-mitzvahs, but kavonas ha-mitzvahs yeshis chalkus. There's a difference in between the mitzvahs and the kavonas of the mitzvahs. In the mitzvah itself, he explained, the mitzvah itself is Ratzon Hashem. And in this, every mitzvah shares the same inyan. They're all Ratzon Hashem. And therefore, there's no chilukim in the mitzvah. You can't divide between one mitzvah and another. You cannot say this is a more important mitzvah than another one. It's only more important, so to speak, in the sense that this one came to my hands now, and therefore I have to do it now because of the time or because of an event or because something happened or whatever it is. Therefore, I have to do this one now. But all of the mitzvahs are equally Ratzon Hashem, and you can't alter hey shoikel mitzvah shel Torah, right? Don't go and weigh up all the mitzvahs and which one's more important and which one's less important, because they're all the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Masha Enkan, the kavonas of the mitzvahs have to do with the inyan of seichel, with the inyan of havona, with the inyan of the kavonas of the mitzvahs have to do with the or pnimi, essentially with Chabad, with Chochmah Bina and Dat of the mitzvah. Every mitzvah has its transcendent aspect, that it's Ratzon Hashem, and every mitzvah has its characteristic which can be understood. The Ratzon Hashem is equal for every mitzvah, and the characteristic of the mitzvah is peculiar to that particular mitzvah. Okay, so this is what he's talking about. The Bezeu Masha Kavonas mitzvahs yeshis chalkus. In the kavonas there are differences. She'ena kavona b'chol mitzvahs b'shaveh, because the kavona in one mitzvah is not the same as the kavona in another mitzvah. Every mitzvah has a different kavona. If you look into the Kisva Arizal, you'll see that shar kavonas and various other sharim of the Arizal, sidurim and so on, you will see that every mitzvah has its own kavona. Tzitzis has a kavona, tefillin has a kavona. Every mitzvah has its own kavona. Lefi shatam v'hasod, the reason for this being different in every mitzvah is that the tam and the sod, the reason and the secret behind the mitzvah, shebachol mitzvah, enu b'shava b'kulam, is not equal in all of them. Masha Amar Razal, what Chazal said, alti yoshev shoikel mitzvah shel Torah, don't go and weigh up the mitzvahs of Torah. The kalosh b'kalos v'chamuros b'chamuro is kulam shavim. The mitzvahs which apparently are the most, on the surface of it are mitzvahs kalois. In other words, they're sort of everyday mitzvahs, so to speak. And mitzvahs chamurois, those mitzvahs which, if a person chas v'sholom doesn't keep them, perhaps there's a much more, there's various ways of explaining it, but there's much more severe punishment and so on. That's one of the explanations. Don't go and weigh up which mitzvahs are more important than others. Why? Shekulam shavim, they're all equal. How are all the mitzvahs equal, even though some have a more serious punishment, some have a less serious punishment? Because they're all Ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'zeu mitzad, as he goes on to explain, zeu mitzad ha'ratzon ha'elyon shebemitzvahs. This is because of the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's in the mitzvahs. Sharatzon and Baba Hagbala V'Yischalkus, because Ratzon does not come into divisions. It doesn't come into, yes, it's true that there's a Ratzon for this thing or a Ratzon for that thing, but the Baal HaRatzon is all the same Baal HaRatzon. It's not that the Ratzonos are different. It's just that the manifestation of where the Ratzon is manifested. Obviously, this is Tittis and that's Tefillin, and this is Shabbos and that's Yom Tov, and so on and so forth. So obviously, not every mitzvah is the same as every other mitzvah. But the Baal HaRatzon is all the same Baal HaRatzon. And therefore, all the mitzvahs are equal and should not be weighed to see which one is more important. So, therefore, but when it comes to the reason and the kavanah of each mitzvah, there are different madrigas in each of the mitzvahs. In a general sense, who are hefresh bein Torah mitzvahs. In a general sense, we could say there's a difference between Torah and mitzvahs. Torah, there's all kinds of different svaras, there's ideas, there's arguments, there's ways of explaining things, different explanations for the same thing. But in Al Kopanim, there's differences in the union of kavanas, and there's differences in the ability to mechaven. There's some people who mechaven to in a certain inyonim very easily. In other words, the kavanas come to them easily, and some have much more difficult time with kavanas. But in general, it's a difference between Torah and mitzvah. Some people have a kop to learn Torah more than others. They just happen to have what's called a gleiche kop in Yiddish, right? Their head is clear. They're able to get into the arguments of the Gemara much more easily than other people. So again, it's a hefresh bein Torah mitzvah. Shai Torah ba b'chinas yischalkus. Shekol inyan Torah yesh behem chilukim. All the inyanim in Torah, every inyan in Torah, every concept, every conceptual basis of an idea has different opinions and different approaches, and there's chilukim, there's differences between them. And there's differences in the aspect of chokhmah that is clothed in each particular in each mitzvah. Some is more in the of chokhmah, some of in of bina, and so on and so forth. All the spheres have their input, so to speak, into the Torah aspect rather than the mitzvah aspect of things, as he will explain further. V'gam b'ha'tainug. Now, this is an important point to note. We'll see what he means shortly. V'gam b'ha'tainug shebeTorah. Even when it comes to tainug of Torah, yesh bazeh chiluka madregas. There are different madregas. Now, let's ask the question. 1 second. Didn't we say at the beginning? We said a few minutes ago that there are 3 koiches makifim of the neshama. One of them is koich haratzoin. And we said there's no hischalkus in Ratzon. It's all the Baal HaRatzon, the master of the Ratzon, in other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we also said that Tainug is one of the koichos of the neshama that is a koach makif. And that's true, and he's not contradicting that over here. What he's saying is simply that when the Tainug becomes malubash in certain inyonim, and he'll say this explicitly in a minute, when it becomes clothed in certain things, then it's a Tanug Prati. So in Tanug, there's also Madregas, and he'll explain that, and he's going to give a couple of cross-references, which I hope you'll have time to look at, and we will see exactly how this pans out very shortly. This is why the neshamas of Bnei Yisrael flew out with every time HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, one of the Aseres HaDibros, and the neshamas flew out again. And then it had to be returned by Tal Torah Mechayehu, the dew of Torah had to bring the neshamas back into the guf. Why the dew of Torah is not for a discussion for now, but that's what Chazal tell us. But the question is, why every time does the neshama fly out again? And his answer is, because every mitzvah was a different inyan in Tainuk. The chiluka madregas, there's different madregas in Tainuk. And therefore, every time there was a new dibur, there was a new Tainuk, and therefore the neshama that had been brought back to the guf after flying out of it previously and was brought back by the Tal Torah, flew out again because a different kind of Tainuk, different sort of Tainuk altogether. and therefore, again, it couldn't take the tainuk, and it jumped out of the guf, so to speak. He'll explain shortly. The Matan Torah, is galus b'chinas tainuk shebatoira. At the time of Matan Torah, what was revealed was the tainuk shebatoira, and in this it's going to be chuluk madregas. We'll see. V'chol dibur v'dibur yesh tainuk prati umiyuchad. And in each of the Aseres HaDibros, each of the Ten Commandments, there was a Tainug Prati, an individual and specific type of Tainug, of delight in the Neshama, that when it experienced it, it couldn't remain in the body. It just was in a state of ecstasy. Al kol charchu, al kain, al kol dibur v'dibur, parcha nishmasam. And therefore, with each and every dibur, the Neshama flew out anew, because it's different madrega. וכמו שכתוב בליקוטי תורה, דברי משכיל, ואייס לאמון, ודברי המשכיל ראו כי השם מסר לנו חסד שבס. Okay, so these references we're going to look at briefly now, where he explains, the Alter Rebbe explains, Likutei Torah, the Alter Rebbe is going to explain to us that we're talking here about a Tainug Prati and not Tainug as one of the transcendent koichos, one of the koichos makifim of the Nefesh. Oh, man. I had it and it disappeared. Look at that. All right. Let's do this one then. All right. This one would have been better to do first. All right. Let me just get it up again. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. Okay. Look at the Torah. What was it? Does anyone remember what the reference was over there? Islam, yeah, that's right. Okay. So that is in Bamidbar. Bamidbar, and if I remember correctly, it was, yes. I think that was where it started. Sorry. Sorry, everybody. This was, I had it all worked out before. No, it was Chesdalet. That's what it was. I had it all worked out before, and then somehow it disappeared. Stuff happens. What can you do? Okay, let's see if I can just get to it quickly. No, this was not it. All right, I'm just going to do this one, and I'm sorry about that. Okay, this is the second reference that he gives. It's in Parshas B'Shalach, Ru Hashem Nosam Shabbos. You can go have a look at the first one as well. I had my look at the Torah here. Okay, forget about it. והנה הכסיב כי אם מקור חיים, פירוש כי עולם הבא, העולם הבא, the world to come, ידוע שהוא מה שהנשומות נהנה מזיו השכינה. That is where the neshomas delight in the radiance of the Shekhinah. והנוע הזו שנהנין אינו אלא על פי הסוגה, שמשיגים באלוקוס דווקא. The delight that the neshama will experience in Gan Eden, in Olam Haba, is the delight, and that's what he's talking about when he's talking about Olam Haba. Yeah, he's talking about Gan Eden, as he makes clear previously and afterwards. We're not talking about Olam Atchiyah. That will be a whole different thing. That's when the Ora Makif is revealed. This is the Ora Pnimi is revealed, and it's each according to his asoga, each according to his or her ability to understand inyonim in Torah, particularly Soidas Torah, the secrets of Torah, and then that brings a certain level of Tainuk. Kaniri Bachush, as we see with our own eyes, Shekol Misha Enu Masig Aseichel, someone who does not grasp a concept, Enu Nehene Umisanig Klal. He's not. He doesn't have any enjoyment. I remember there was one in the Gemara in Shabbos. I think it's in Shabbos if I'm not mistaken. There's a min meaning a non-believer, who says about, I think it was Reb Shimon ben Pazi, if I'm not mistaken. He called them anyway, Amma Paziza. He said about Bnei Israel that they're called an Amma Paziza, weird folk, or rash people. Why? Because one of the Chachamim was trying to figure out an Inyan, and he was sitting on his hands. And he didn't notice that he was crushing one of his fingers till it started to bleed. And this min came by and he said, "I'm a pazida. What a foolish people, or what a rash people these are." The idea here is that when a person is trying to figure something out, and you probably know this from your own experience, when you're trying to figure something out, something very deep, and then there's a disturbance of some sort or another, it can be so irritating and so disheartening, and unfortunately we can even, God forbid, lash out at somebody else because they're disturbing your train of thought, right? So in other words, you're not enjoying until you grasp the idea. You're not in a state of enjoyment. Only when you actually grasp it is a state of enjoyment. Okay. And since this is the case, when you do eventually understand the statement, this Indian of oinek comes into tfisa, it's grasped. In other words, we're not talking about the oinek the way it is in its original source. We're talking about the oinek the way it is down below. It became a yesh, became a davar. A davar ma. And then he goes on to say that the gilo oinek ha'elyon hazeh yarad kol kach yesh v'davar. There's oinek the way it is in its source, which is a koyach makif, and then there's oinek the way it comes into pratius, into specific incidents and specific things that cause the oinek, and there's a very big gap between these two things. There's tanug ha'elyon and there's tanug ha'tachton. And he goes on to speak about this in the other source that he quotes in Likutei Torah. He also speaks about this at length. You can go and have a look over there. Let's not waste our time on trying to find it now. Okay, so as we said, these are the two references, and you can go find them. So he continues. That's all when it comes to the Inyan of Torah. In the Inyan of Torah, there's chilukim in the levels of Tainuk. Mitzvahs, but mitzvahs are not like that. Mitzvahs don't have chilukim in them. There's no difference between one mitzvah and another in the essence of the mitzvah. Mitzvahs, mitzad ratzon ha'elyon, they come from the ratzon of Hashem, and not the chokhmah in which Tainug is mulubash. And all mitzvahs are equal in terms of being ratzon ha'elyon. Okay. There's a difference between the obligation to occupy oneself with Torah study, Esek Torah, and the inyan of fulfilling mitzvahs. That in the inyan of fulfilling mitzvahs, everybody is equal. Everybody has to keep Shabbos. Doesn't matter if you're Talmud Chochem, Am Haaretz. Everyone has to eat matzah on Pesach. Talmud Chochem, Am Haaretz. Afilu a cotton is not allowed to use chometz on Pesach. Okay, he goes on to explain the bechiyuv the esek Torah, that as far as occupying oneself with Torah study, yesh b'zeh madregas, is different levels. The mitzvah is v'higisa boy. You occupy yourself. You put your koiches into it. Yom v'layla, day and night. In other words, oh, I'm sorry. There's questions in the chat group. What page is this? In Ayin Beis, it's on Dab Zayin. Isn't Ratzon in the Moyach? No, Ratzon is not actually in the Moyach. No. Ratzon is a Koyach Makif. Ratzon is a Koyach Makif. The Moichin are Koyach HaChochma is said to be in the right hemisphere of the brain. Koyach Habin in the left hemisphere of the brain. and das is the madala. If we're just talking about it in terms of physicality. So in Ayin Beis on page Zion, Chochmah El Yoina is like Ratzon in its pshitus. Now Chochmah is not like Ratzon because there are madregas in Chochmah. Although Chochmah ma'ayin to motzai, but nevertheless, when Chochmah comes out, there's different madregas in Chochmah. Therefore, you can have Sheva Chochmas Ha'olam. The Chazal talk about in Midrashim, and even Gemara, the Gemara, the Chachomim talk about that there are Sheva Chochmas, right? There's Chochmah of Torah, obviously. There's Chochmah mathematics. There's Chochmah of engineering. There's Handasa. There's Chochmah of the way the planets and the stars, and so astronomy, and so on. And then there's a few others. Chochmah Sarafua. There's 7 Chochmahs altogether traditionally. But they're all Chochmah, and why is it that Chochmah is divisible? Because Chochmah is divisible. Chochmah is at a Koach Pnimi, and therefore Mamela it's divisible. Since it's an or in a Kli, it's shy to the union of being divisible in one way or another. Okay. If whoever has their mic on, if you wouldn't mind just muting yourself for a few minutes. If you want to speak afterwards, that's fine, but just if you don't mind muting your mic, it's just good for the recording. Okay, so what we said was that there's a chiyuv of limud HaTorah yoimam v'alayla, day and night. We'll see that there's a difference between different kinds of people. We'll see what that means shortly. Shia esek HaTorah tomid. Person should be learning Torah all the time. Learning Torah all the time is for people who sit in yeshiva or sit in koil. Yeah, people who are sitting all day, they should be learning Torah all day. That's all they should be doing. They shouldn't be doing the stock market, and they shouldn't be doing the news and Breitbart, Fox, whatever. But they should simply be doing the Yoshua Oil. They should be learning Torah all day. But people who are involved in business, a parak in the morning, a parak in the evening. And for them, that's a vihigisa by Yom HaValayla. For them, that's fulfilling the mitzvah of Yom HaValayla. Umasha Amar Razal, Shiyei Teretzcha Kva, Malachtecha Aroi. So when Chazal say that your Torah should be set and the work that you do should be sort of malleable and movable, that contradicts what we just said. Even someone who is a Baal Esek, L'chayra, should have his Torah should be kva, and his malacha should be sort of on a temporary basis when I have time. So he explains that that's not what it means. It has to be the way a person thinks about his mindset as regards his learning has to be fixed. I have to learn Torah every day. There are some people I know who are Bale Esek, they're business people. They start work early in the morning, fairly early in the morning. But comes 4:30, 5 o'clock, they're up and about. They're doing chitas early in the morning before going to davening. The daven in a minyan. They come home, they have shiurim and kviyos itul the Torah and so on and so forth. And that kind of learning is also called v'higisa bo yom v'alayla. A person learns in the morning, he learns in the evening, and he uses the time appropriately, all the time that he has, and that's called learning Torah. V'higisa bo yom v'alayla. Okay. The Tachlis Kabbalah that a person, what does it mean, Kviyus Benefesh? Kviyus Benefesh means that his mindset is, I'm a Torah learner, I'm someone who's learning Torah. I'm someone who learns Torah every morning and every night. It's fixed in my neshama and it's not going to move. If anything has to move, I'll be late for work. If I have to finish chitas, I'm going to be late for work. That's all there is to it. I might get fired. I'm not suggesting this, ladies and gentlemen, but it's a kviyus benefesh that if a person doesn't manage to finish chitas in the time that he or she allotted for themselves, they didn't manage to finish Tanya or Tilim or whatever it was that they were supposed to do, they feel it bothers them. They feel like I'm not b'shleimus. I'm not okay with that. I don't feel easy. It's not ma b'chach. What's the difference? I'll make it up some other time. No, feels like uneasy about it and unhappy about the fact that they didn't. They got up late. The baby was up during the night, and he didn't sleep properly. And he woke up in the morning. He woke up a half hour late. He doesn't have time to sit and learn. He has to be at work. It bothers him the entire day. Okay, that's called kviyus benefesh. The tachlis kavanos the intention is that he's going to learn Torah. Even when a person is busy with his business, the intention is to earn himself some money. For what? That he'll be able to study Torah. They say about, if I'm not mistaken, was it a Mercusio Leffler? It could be that was a Mercusio Leffler. I might be making a mistake over here, and I think I may be making a mistake. But anyway, the story goes that he was also a businessman on the side. He was quite wealthy, in fact, but he spent all of his time learning Torah. And then when he came to, he had to sign a cheshbon for trees. He was a tree merchant, right, a lumber merchant. He had to sign a docket or whatever it's called for a certain amount of trees, and it said, the sacha kol at the end, the sacha kol, sum total, right? Sum total. He signed ein oid milvado. That's the sum total, ein oid milvado, and he meant it. Wasn't like, he was. That's what he was thinking about. Ein oid milvado. And therefore, that's the way he signed the document. When it comes to the Sacha Kol, what's the Sacha Kol? Ein od milvado. There's no one besides HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's it. I'm even making mistakes that it wasn't Mercusio Leffler, it might be someone else. But in any event, that's the story. So, why does he want to earn himself a decent living? So that he can live comfortably at a certain point in time and devote the rest of his life to Torah, as well as Ulahadrich Banov, but Talmud Torah, L'kiyum mitzvahs. Pinchas writes this. I think you're right. Yes. Not Rosen, but writes this. Yeah. Pinchas Roises. You're right. It was. Shkoyach. Shkoyach, Alex. Okay. In any event, that the story is still the right story. It's Asacha Kol Enod Milvad. Right. So what does a person want to earn money for? What does he want to be able to earn a living for? Because he wants to be able to teach his children and to be able to provide for his children and his family. And therefore it's called Vazehu Be'esek HaTorah. That's called Esek HaTorah. Right? That's also Esek HaTorah. But all that we've been talking about now, when there's differences. He has a Balabais, has his Kviyus Itim LaTorah, but it has to be a Kviyus Benefesh. It has to be fixed in his neshama that he's going to be learning Torah. Whereas a Baal Torah, Ben Torah, someone who sits in yeshiva all day, he has the whole day. He has to sit and learn and not waste his time. So we see that there's difference. Aval bekiyuma mitzvahs, but when it comes to fulfilling the mitzvahs, everyone is equal. Everyone is equally obligated in fulfilling the mitzvahs. Just because a person is an maamer doesn't mean to say he doesn't have to put on tefillin and daven 3 times a day. You might not understand everything about the diyukim in tefillin and the diyukim in davening and so on, and the kavonas in davening, but daven he does 3 times a day. And put on tefillin he does. And so on and so forth, and keep Shabbos. Am Haaretz, Talmud Chacham, everybody's equal. Mash ein kan b'Torah, ein kulam shavim. Kumo Baal Esek and Chulu Kanal, as we said, there's a difference between a Baal Esek and a Ben Torah. There's also different madregas in mitzvahs. The Gam be'esek Sfiras hashayachim l'Torah. Takli yosh Torah sankva ukviyus bezman. I'm sorry. We're going back to the union of the Kriyas in Torah. There's different madregas in Torah, just as the different madregas in the Esek Sfiros. And the Esek Sfiros also shayachim to Torah. In other words, there's certain aspects of Torah that appeal more to the midos. There's certain aspects of Torah that appeal more to the moichin. certain aspects of Torah that appeal more to helping others, and so on and so forth. Okay. Misha eno shaykh be'etzem le'esek haTorah is someone who just doesn't have the brain, the intellectual capacity to actually sit and learn Torah. He's nevertheless obligated to some extent in Esek Torah. There's a discussion in Chazal whether a person could be fulfill their obligation of the Higisa Bo Yom Valayla, studying Torah day and night, by simply saying Shema, Kriya Shema Shel Shachris, or Kriya Shema Shel Arvis. There's a discussion in the Gemara where the person is Yotzi on learning Torah just by saying Kriya Shema. Obviously, we mean for a person who is not capable of anything more than that. Okay. Mishum, the mitzvah, the Esek HaTorah, HaKol Mechiyavim Ba. Everyone is obligated in learning Torah. Etc. Some people will be yoitzi with just learning one chapter in the morning, one chapter in the evening, perhaps even Shema, according to some of the poskim, some of the opinions. But nevertheless, when it comes to Torah learning, there's different madrigas, there's different chilukim. And therefore, it's kiyus benefesh, as we just said. When we say his Torah is fixed, it's fixed in the nefesh. Moshkat the Talmud Torah, Perigimel, the Alter Rebbe. So there's a difference, therefore, between the obligation to learn Torah and the obligation to fulfill all of the mitzvahs. And all of this is regards in Torah mitzvahs. Because Torah is the aspect of Chokhmah, and therefore in Chokhmah, because this Chokhmah is a Koach Pnimi, it's a Sphira which has Or Pnimi, therefore there's going to be differences between one manifestation of Chokhmah and another manifestation of Chokhmah. She has Madregas Chilukim. There's different levels. But mitzvahs ain't Ratzon HaElyon, but the mitzvahs correspond to Kesed, in Ratzon HaElyon, Ratzon. Shem Bazeh is Chalkus Madregas, there's no differences, everyone is equally obligated in all of the mitzvahs of the Torah that we can perform in our times. V'pratius hu b'mitzvahs atzman. But in a more specific sense, in the mitzvahs themselves, I have to bring kavonas and mitzvahs le'etzem kiyuma mitzvahs. There's also a difference in the mitzvah itself between the etzem asiyah of the mitzvah, the ma'aseh mitzvah, what you have to do in the mitzvah, and the kavanah in the mitzvah. In the kavanas of the mitzvah, there's different madregas. Each mitzvah has its own kavanah, and different people are obligated in kavanas and the mitzvahs in different ways. And Amaretz is only obligated in the mitzvah in the sense of that the mitzvah is given by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's all that he has to think about. Mashain kind of Makubal, let's say, one of the Talmidim and the Arizal, when he does a mitzvah, he has to think through the entire kavana while he's doing the mitzvah, before he does the mitzvah, in order to be able to do it properly. Okay, so again, so there's a pratius of a mitzvahs atzman, or average bank kavanas of mitzvahs le'etzem kiyuma mitzvahs. There's a difference between the kavana and the actual fulfillment. The actual fulfillment of the mitzvah is ratzon ha'elyon. The kavanas of the mitzvah that comes from the various spheroids, pnimios. In every mitzvah, there have to be two kavanas. And that's the specific kavana that's associated with that particular mitzvah. Again, these are emphasized and laid out clearly in the kavanas of the Arizal and various other sforim. But that's the specific kavana. That's the kavana for someone who is on the madrega that they can machaven in that way. They can have kavana. V'habeis bebechinas kabbalas u'malchus. But the second aspect of doing a mitzvah is you're accepting upon yourself the yoke of heaven. L'kaim ritzoynoi ula'avdoi b'chol minei avodas eved. To do the will of Hashem and fulfill His ratzon, b'chol minei avodas eved. As it says in Tanya, Perik Mem Aleph. Oh, he writes it here. Perik Mem Aleph. To fulfill Hashem's ratzon as if we were an eved, as if a person was a servant. Even perhaps you could say a slave. The difference between a servant and a slave is a servant works for himself. A slave works for his master. Someone works for himself because he gets a salary, and that's what he does to earn a living. Mashenka and a slave, he does it because he's sort of enslaved to his master. Now, this obviously we don't tolerate slavery today, this whole concept, but the concept of slavery in Torah simply means the idea of nullifying one's own ratzon to the ratzon ha'adoin, the ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the ratzon of the master, so to speak. Okay. V'zeu she'berov ha'mitzvos mesayim b'Torah ani Hashem, ani Havaya. So whenever in the Torah, almost always, whenever there's a section which is describing a mitzvah in the Torah, it finishes off with the words ani Hashem. The majority of the mitzvahs is like that. What's the Inyan? The l'chayra and a move on. We don't understand this. Why does that have to finish off with I am Hashem? Like we didn't know who it was from. It's not these mitzvahs weren't given by Moshe Rabbeinu or by the Chachamim. These were mitzvahs that were given by Kodesh Baruch Hu. These are the mitzvahs of the Torah. So what does it mean, Ani Hashem? Why did he have to tell us this? So he explains. This represents, the Ani Hashem represents the two inyonim that are in mitzvahs. The kavonas are mitzvahs, the intention that there is in the mitzvah, the specific intention that each mitzvah has a different kavona. Each mitzvah has a different meditation associated with it. The kavonas are mitzvahs, mitzvahs tluim b'shem havaya. That's how the mitzvahs depend on Shem Havaya. There's a mitzvah that's talu b'yud, the mitzvah that's talu b'hei, a mitzvah talu b'vav, and so on and so forth. Yesh mitzvahs are tluim b'ois yud, v'yesh b'ois hei, etc. Depends on which particular mitzvah, and this is listed in some of the Svarim, which particular mitzvah is associated with which particular ois of Shem Havaya and Shem Adnai, and so on and so forth. That's the Inyan of Shem Havaya. Inyan Ani Havaya, when it says Ani Hashem, Ainu B'chinos Atmus Orein Sof, Shalomali Mishem Havaya. Ani Mishani, Anoichi Mishanoichi. Right? That's the Orein Sof that's in every mitzvah equally. That's the Rotan of Hashem that's in every mitzvah equally. Shemischaber B'Shem Havaya Churu. That's Ani attaches itself to Shem Havaya because both of them are in each mitzvah. There's the kavon of the mitzvah, there's the Havaya part of the mitzvah, and there's the Ani part of the mitzvah. The Ikar of the mitzvah is the Ani part of the mitzvah. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the mitzvahs, what did he give us? He gave us himself. He gave us his Anoichi. The mitzvah b'chinas madrega zu lo yesh his chalkus madregas klal. That when it comes to ani, there's no differences in one madrega, this madrega, that madrega. Every mitzvah is ani. Ani havaya, and that's why it finishes off ani havaya because you have both of these things. Even though there are in Torah different levels, different in yonim, some are yud, some are hey, and so on and so forth. Behind mitzvahs, the differences are in the secret of the mitzvahs, in the reason for the mitzvah, in the explanation of the mitzvah, in the kavanah of the mitzvah. But the etzem mitzvah, which is ani, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's no chilukim. Don't go and weigh up which mitzvah is more important than the other one. Why? Mishum da'ani havaya. The atzvus or ensof meir b'shem havaya. That Atmus Eretz of Ani, I am who I am. That is what is Meir in Shamavaya, B'B'Chins Ratzon Elyon, Shalmal Michochma. That's the Ratzon that transcends Chochma completely. The Mitzad Zeh Lo Yesh Chiluk Madregas Klal. In terms of this, there's no differences between one mitzvah and another. It's all the same. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all Ani. And in general, the concept is as follows: that when we're talking about oiros or koichos, oiros in terms of the sphere, it's koichos in terms of the neshama. When they come in an aspect of pnimi, when we call it an or pnimi, in other words, an or in a kli, or a koyach in an aver of the body, one of the avarim, one of the limbs of the body, so to speak. So therefore, and the limbs of the body are not necessarily the arms and legs only. The limbs of the body also, because there's 248 limbs of the body corresponding to the 248 mitzvahs. A limb could be something like the heart is called a limb. The eyes, each one is called a limb, so to speak, right? At least in the Torah sense. So again, those that come in an internal, imminent oil, they are limited. In order to be clothed in a kli, they have to be limited. Okay, and therefore they come into division. There's divisions between one thing and another. When we talk about the koichos apnimim, not only in terms of the Seder Ishtaushlus is the aura of Chokhmah different from the aura of Bina, different from the aura of Chesed, different from the aura of Gvura, but even when they're malubash one and the other, ubi Hislapshus and Bekalim, they come out, there's many different chilukim. So we've gone through Ishtaushlus and Hislapshus. But in terms of Hashro'ah, which we mentioned previously, there's three madregas. There's a madrega of Hishtoshlus, which is the internal development of the Sphirot, one from the other. There's Islapshut, which is the interaction of the Sphirois one with the other, or more correctly, the interaction of the Partsufim one with another, parts of Abba and parts of Ima, which is Chochmah and Bina, parts of Zer Anpin, from Chesed to Yesod, and the parts of Malchus, which is called Nukva, interact together. And they elicit a certain oir, but that oir that they elicit is also not the or atzmi, right? Even though there's interactions between the spheroids and they elicit a higher oir, they elicit a higher or from a higher oilam, but they don't elicit the ani, which is the inav hashra, which is what the Baal Shem Tov spoke about. We mentioned that there's three stages in the development of Kabbalah, the Kabbalah up until the Ramak, and then the Kabbalah of the Arizal. Kabbalah up until the Ramak was basically focused on the Inyan Vishtalshalus. The Kabbalah of the Arizal focused primarily on the Inyan of Hislapshus, incorporating Hishtalshalus, but primarily Hislapshus. And then the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov focused on the Inyan of Hashra. Hashra means the dwelling upon of Elokus, the etzem of Elokus, without looking at the different madregas, but the Inyan of etzem Elokus. Okay, so again, there's Ischalchus be'etzem v'chein b'islapshusam b'zeh u'b'islapshusam b'hakelim. There's also different madregas. Mokein beruchnias b'Torah v'kavonas hamitzvahs, in learning Torah and in the Indian of kavonas yesh ischalchus. There are different madregas. But when it comes to ratzoin u'beratzon shebemitzvahs lo yesh ischalchus. There's no difference between one mitzvah and another. Ani havaya. That's why it says ani havaya. It's me, myself. I'm giving you me. Nosati lachem. Ani nosati lachem. I gave you my ani. I gave you me. Ani havaya. Ani shebahavaya. All mitzvahs shavit. All mitzvahs are equal. Okay, just the kitzur of this particular pair of this perek. And therefore, all the koiches, the nefesh, the koiches pnimim, come into limitation, and therefore he's chalkus. There's divisions between one and the other. And that's why there's differences in the kavonas of mitzvahs. Which is not true in terms of the ratan of the mitzvahs. There, all mitzvahs are equal. Same too with Torah mitzvahs in general. There's differences in Torah. When it comes to mitzvahs, everyone's equal. Therefore, that's not you can't compare the obligation to study Torah to the obligation of kiyum of mitzvahs. The kiyum of mitzvahs, everyone is equally obligated. In Torah, it depends on the person's circumstances and on their abilities. And therefore, when a person is doing a mitzvah, fulfilling a mitzvah, there must be two kavonas: a specific kavona which is associated with that mitzvah, and then the overarching kavona, which is that this is the tzivoy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why at the end of the mitzvah, when the mitzvah is told, in most of the mitzvahs it says Zeru Shechoisem, and that's why it concludes in most of the mitzvahs, Ani Havaya, I am Hashem. Havaya is divisible into Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, Yud, Hey, Vav, okay? different madregas. Masha Enka and Ani is all one Ani. HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Ani Ba'atzmi. Okay, that finishes the first maamer of Ayin Beis, and Be'ez Hashem, if everyone is interested, we will continue with the second maamer. Are there any questions? Are there spheres which go into the Kavona? Asforim which go into the Kavona? Yes. And the ani of each mitzvah. Ani of each mitzvah is the same ani, but there are sforim that go into the kavonas. The sefer kavonas are the reason. There's sefer kavonas, there's shara kavonas, there's Mishnah Chasidim, which goes into the sections. There are sections which deal with the kavonas of the mitzvahs, and sefer Haredim, and several other sforim which deal with this issue. Yes, Ratzon Esem and light or of each mitzvah. Yeah, to a certain extent. You also find in Derech Mitzvah Secha, actually. You also find in Derech Mitzvah Secha, of the Tzemach Tzedek. Want to begin? Let me tell you something. The Shar HaKavonas of the Arizal is a very shver sefer. It's so hard to remember all the kavonas. Is there a sefer you could begin with? Let me give it some thought. I'll look around and see what might be the best one to start with. But Shara Kavonas and Sefer Kavonas are very schwere Sachen. They're really quite complex. I think there's Svarim from the Chidah. That probably would be the best place to begin. But I will look into it and I'll get back to you.
Rabbi, is the comparison fair that mitzvahs, as they are in their root, in source, is in Ratzon, but he's not comparing to Torah in its source. He's comparing to Torah as it comes down to the tainig of a person. Torah in its source would also be in a Peshitistic level.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. You're 100% right. That is true. That's also would have that Peshitistic union. But we're not talking about the way Torah is, the Torah mitzvahs are up there. We're talking about the way Torah mitzvahs are down here. Even mitzvahs down here are ani havaya.
Well, again, it was stated it depends on the particular kavanas and
No, the kavanas are the inyan of havaya, but every mitzvah, even when we do it down here, is the inyan of ani.
So every Torah that we learn is also connected to the aleph, so to speak, before the base on Gemara, might say.
I'm not disagreeing with you that is the case, but the ikar inyan of asiyas mitzvah is the ani of the mitzvah. Masha Enkan, the ikar inyan of limud Torah is not necessarily the ani of the Torah. It's the inyan of havona v'hasoga. Yes, it's true that if a person doesn't have the overarching kavona of this is the Torah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then he's liable to go off into the sticks. But that is when a person is actually sitting and learning. That's the kavona that a person has to have before he starts learning. That this is Torah Hashem. But when he's learning, it has to be with havona and hasoga. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we disagree, but I hear what you say.
No.
All right. Any other questions? I Blineda, Ruth, I will look into it and I'll get back to you, Blineda, okay? If I don't get back to you in a few days, just drop me an email if you don't mind. I just sometimes get involved in things that, I might forget. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, good. Rabbi Sai, I will put this up on YouTube on the channel Hasidus Decoded. If anyone wants the channel link. I could share it, I guess. Probably everyone has it anyway, so let's see here. Let us see. Here we go. All right, if anyone wants it, it is here. But just go to Hasidus Decoder. That's the. Want to copy that? Oh, why did I put it privately? Let me put it to everybody, everyone in the meeting. Sorry. Okay, there you go. That's where the recording will be. It'll take about probably half an hour before it gets there. All right. Okay, everybody. Blogger. I'll see you next week.
תודה. שבוע טוב.
שבוע טוב. Thank you. לילה טוב.
לילה טוב.